You've probably heard this story a million times. Success is all about talent and grinding it out with hard work. But what if that's not even close to the whole picture? Today, we're jumping into Malcolm Gladwell's famous book, Outliers, which tells us the real story of success is way more surprising and a lot more complicated than we think.
This is the question at the heart of the whole book. Why do some people become outliers? The rock stars, the tech billionaires, the geniuses. We think we know the answer, right? They're just smarter, they're more driven, they work harder. But Gladwell basically says, hold on, let's challenge that entire idea.
This is the myth we all love. The self-made hero who pulls themselves up by their bootstraps. It's an inspiring story, for sure. But Gladwell's big argument? This amazing story is pretty much a fiction. So, to start chipping away at this myth, Gladwell begins somewhere totally unexpected, not with a story of success, but with a real-life medical mystery, a strange and wonderful puzzle tucked away in the hills of Pennsylvania. Welcome to Rosetta. Back in the middle of the 20th century, this was a super tight-knit town of Italian immigrants. Looked like any other small town, but under the surface, something truly extraordinary was going on.
So here's the thing that had doctors scratching their heads. At a time when heart attacks were a full-blown epidemic in America, the people of Roseto, well, they seemed to be practically immune. They weren't dying of heart disease. They were just dying of old age.
The researchers, of course, looked at the obvious stuff first. Had to be their diet, right? Some kind of Mediterranean magic? Not a chance. The people of Roseto were cooking with lard, smoking like chimneys, and a lot of them were obese. So nope, not the diet.
Okay, fine. So what about genetics? Maybe they just came from heartier stock. But then scientists checked out relatives from Roseto who had moved away. And guess what? They had heart disease at the same rate as everybody else. So it wasn't in their DNA.
So if it wasn't their diet and it wasn't their genes, what in the world was it? The researchers finally realized they were looking in all the wrong places. The secret wasn't inside the people. The secret was the town of Roseto.
You see, the Rosetans had built this incredible social fortress. You had 3 generations living in the same house, tons of community groups, and a culture where nobody felt alone. This deep sense of community was like a shield, protecting them from the stress of the outside world. It was their environment that was keeping them healthy.
So a town's environment can literally change people's health. That's a wild idea. But can it also shape success? Gladwell takes us from this tiny town to a completely different world, elite Canadian hockey, where a shocking pattern reveals another kind of powerful, hidden advantage.
If there's one place we believe is a pure meritocracy, it's got to be sports. In Canadian hockey, they find the best kids when they're super young and groom them for the big leagues. It's supposed to be all about talent and hard work. Or so you'd think. So, take a look at this list of players from an elite junior team. Just names and birthdays, right? But hiding in plain sight here is a massive advantage that has absolutely nothing to do with talent. Can you spot it? And here's the secret. It's almost unbelievable. A huge chunk of these elite players are born in January, February, or March. Why? Well, in Canada, the cutoff date for age group hockey is January 1st. That means a kid born in January is competing against kids who are almost a whole year younger. At that age, he's just physically bigger and stronger, so he gets picked for the better teams, gets better coaching, and gets more practice.
Gladwell calls this the Matthew effect. It's this idea of a cumulative advantage. A tiny, totally random advantage at the start, like being born in January, just snowballs. That initial edge leads to better opportunities, which makes you better, which leads to even more opportunities. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So what is this accumulative advantage really all about? What does a better opportunity actually give you? The answer, Gladwell says, is simple. It gives you time. Specifically, time to practice.
You see, researchers have found this sort of magic number for becoming a true world-class expert at something, and that number is 10,000 hours. Think about that. Practice isn't just something you do once you're good, it's the very thing that makes you good. But the real question is, who gets the chance to put in those 10,000 hours? That takes a very special kind of opportunity.
Let's talk about the Beatles. Before they were the Beatles, they got a gig playing in strip clubs in Hamburg, Germany, and they played constantly, 8 hours a night, 7 days a week. It sounds awful, right? But that grueling schedule was their golden ticket. Hamburg is where they put in their 10,000 hours.
But what about Bill Gates? His path to 10,000 hours was just this unbelievable string of lucky breaks.
First, his fancy high school got one of the first computer terminals ever back in 1968. Then, a company nearby let his computer club use their computers for free. He even found a way to sneak into a university lab to code all night. Every single lucky break was another chance to practice, giving him thousands of hours that basically no other teenager on the planet had.
But here's the other piece of the puzzle. All that practice has to happen at the exact right moment. The starting gun for the PC revolution really fired in 1975. So, to be in the perfect position, you had to be old enough to know how to program, but young enough that you weren't already locked into a career. That created this tiny window of opportunity. The perfect time to be born was 1954 or 1955. And would you look at that? Here are the birth years of the pioneers of Silicon Valley. Bill Gates, Paul Allen, Steve Jobs, all born right in that perfect little window. Yeah, they were brilliant, no one's denying that, but they also had the incredible good fortune to be born at the exact right moment in history. Okay, so let's tie this all together. We've got a super healthy town, hockey players' birthdays, the 10,000-hour rule, and just plain old lucky timing. What does it all mean? Well, it all points to a totally new way of looking at what it takes to succeed.
Gladwell uses this really powerful metaphor of a giant oak tree. He says we're always focused on the acorn, the individual talent, the seed, but we totally ignore the forest around it, the fact that it got all the sunlight, that the soil was perfect, that nothing else got in its way. Outliers are a product of their world.
So this is the big switch. We're fed the myth that it's all about the acorn, all about individual brilliance. But Gladwell shows us the reality. Success is about the forest. It's about where we come from, the opportunities we're given, and the hidden advantages that help us along the way. And this all leaves us with a really challenging final thought. If success isn't just earned, but it's also a gift, a product of our environment and our luck, then how does that change the way we think about people who don't succeed? How should we think about failure?